Good morning, Drew. How are you?
No, we started that way last time. Cut. Okay. Good morning. How are
Good
you?
morning. Good morning.
Well, it's another bright morning here. No coffee cup. Got the Starbucks going. You?
No coffee cup. It is morning, but I do not have any Starbucks going. But
Okay.
but welcome everyone to Drew and Dan in the morning. We're rolling right into it. Actually, it's been a little bit, but we've had work and life happens in between podcast episodes. So welcome back to Drew and Dan in the morning, everyone.
Well, let's see. When we last left you, what were we talking about? I've got a little bit of follow up actually. If we could just kind of go over a couple. Last time we talked a couple things about the app review guidelines and if and asking for ratings. Like, can you ask for a rating? Can you ask for a review? We know a lot of apps do the thing where they ask you if you like the app first. And if you say, oh my God, it's the best thing ever, then they say, hey, how about leaving us a review or a rating?
Right.
And then if you don't say it's the best thing ever, they go, oh, geez, tell us why. But they don't send you to the review prompt. And that's why I say, 4.5 is sort of the baseline ratings.
The minimum. I've actually that thing has stuck with me for a moment because when I was in training for work last week, there's an app that you can download to order food from the cafeteria, and that app had 2.5 stars, which I thought was pretty funny because it can't possibly be used by very many people, but maybe that's why it's only 2.5 stars. But it's a thing. It is important, and honestly, I don't prompt too often for the App Store review, but it is important for surfacing your app on the App Store. It's something that I need to probably focus on a little bit more.
Yeah. So I just did a little bit of follow up, a little research after that we talked last time to see what the app review guidelines say about it. And I found a couple things, got a couple little snippets here. If you attempt to cheat the system, for example, by trying to check the review process, steal data, et cetera, manipulate ratings, your apps may be removed from the store and you will be expelled from the Apple developer program. So that's pretty clear. Then there's another one that says apps must not force users to rate the app or review the app or a bunch of other things in order to access functionality, content, or use the app. It says App Store reviews can be an integral part of the app experience, so you should treat customers with respect when responding to their comments. Keep your responses targeted to the user's comments and do not include personal information, spam, or marketing in your response. And then it says, use the provided API to prompt users to review your app. This functionality allows customers to provide the App Store rating and review without the inconvenience of leaving your app. And then it says, and we will disallow custom review prompts, which makes it pretty clear that it's not allowed. And then there's another part under discovery fraud under 5.6.3 that says manipulating any element of the App Store customer experience, such as charts, search, reviews, or referrals to your app. Referrals to your app, interesting. Erodes customer trust and is not permitted. Indications that you might not be meeting that expectation might include excessive customer reports about concerns with your app, such as negative customer reviews and excessive fund requests. So, and then it goes on to say, inability to maintain high quality may be a factor in deciding whether a developer is abiding by the developer code of conduct. So, if you're going to have low quality reviews, that could get you kicked out, is how I read that.
I wonder how extreme that has to go because I feel like there's a lot of low quality apps on the App Store. But if they're not getting reviews, maybe they're just not surfaced or they're not getting enough downloads. But what my question for you is what do you determine is a good place in your app to request a review? Like, do you use a timer? Do you use a certain number of interactions? Where do you put that trigger?
Well, I'll tell you where Apple says you should put it. They say, and this is not in the app review guidelines, but in the Apple Human Interface Guidelines says, I grabbed a couple quotes out here, ask for a rating only after people have demonstrated engagement with your app or game. And then it says, consider allowing at least a week or two between requests. And it says, prefer the system provided prompt. And that does appear to contradict the App Store review guidelines just above where we just talked about that said that they may disallow. They say may or will. What do they say? We will disallow custom review prompts. but the human interface guidelines say prefer the system provided prompt.
Prefer. Interesting.
So,
Right.
you know, they prefer you to design by using the system provided prompt, but they will disallow custom review prompts when they review your app. That's how I read that. So, you know, I think the thing that a lot of the apps are doing, which is, you know, asking you how you feel about the app, and then if you say it's great, then you send them to the review prompt, is maybe not okay.
Sure. Right. That would be a custom review prompt. Without looking at my code specifically, if I remember where I put this into my app with the Midst, I think I had it something like if the person has interacted with a screen or two screens 5 different times, and I just have a little user defaults counter that goes up and says, you did this thing 5 times, then they're probably using the app a reasonable amount. And so then I trigger the prompt at that point. So it's an interaction target that I'm reaching for. But what do you look for?
And maybe I don't know if you remember about the review prompt, but I think, doesn't it say that it will only show it to the user a maximum of like 3 times in a year, or three times ever, or something? Or
Yeah. There
3
was
times
something
per app
about
version,
that.
maybe. I think when you do a new app version, you can.
Right, and so I was kind of relying on Apple's the system
To not show it too often.
right, because I know that it'll prevent it. So I felt like, well, I'm not going to put some kind of a timer on there. I'm just going to have an interaction gate that people cross,
Yeah.
and then with every app update, that user defaults value is going to get. I think I reset it.
Right, and I know a lot of people talking about, like, right after they did whatever the main thing was, or something that indicated it was positive, like, you know, if you let's see, well, what are your apps? You've got your the Midst, which is very popular, kind of life blogging almost, right?
Life logging, yeah.
Anyway, but that one, I think after you checked in somewhere, maybe that would be a good time to say, oh, let's
Right.
throw up that thing saying, hey, how do you love the Midst? Yeah, we know you love it, but like, can you please hit the 5 right here? That'd be great. So, what do you guys all think? Anyone else who's watching this? I know there's probably at least a couple hundred of you by now.
There must be.
Episode 2.
I would be curious to know. It seems like it's something that's not really talked about a whole lot. Is where you trigger that, or I haven't gotten into a lot of conversations about where you trigger that. It's kind of this ephemeral thing that is.
No, and I think it's at odds with the marketing. Like if you watch someone say, "Hey, what makes people make your app work well?" and they'll tell you, throw that rating or review prompt up on the screen as soon as you can on the very first launch, right away, which is a terrible customer experience, but also it apparently drives better review numbers, and those drive downloads. So then, there's definitely a trade-off there, and you can certainly see apps going to both extremes, I'll say.
Yeah, it's this endless struggle with having a good experience, but then getting promoted or elevated on the App Store to get downloads. I hate that when I open an app and I've barely opened it and it asks me.
Yeah, like review. Why would I want to review it? I just opened it. Like, right.
It feels like a dark pattern to me, so I avoid that.
A large, I don't know, majority, but a large number of apps will give you that review prompt, not necessarily not the first second you open it, but during their onboarding or toward the end of their onboarding. Certainly before you hit a paywall screen, though. So yeah. Anyway.
Well, I don't have a news item or a follow up other than what I have is a tool. And it kind of dovetails into what I'm going to talk about today, which is sign in with Apple. But when working with sign in with Apple, there's a front end side of it, there's the back end side of it, and working with the back end, one of the tools that I use on my Mac to test my endpoints is an app called GetAPI, and a very more popular one I feel like is Postman. That's the one I started with, but I've discovered GetAPI from I actually don't remember where I discovered it, but somehow I ran across this, and what the app does is just a Mac app that you can use to create, create, read, update, delete endpoints to query CRUD app operations, And you can configure your headers and the JSON body in there to send or make requests to your server as you're testing it. And it's just a very simple app.
And how is that? Sorry to interrupt you. How is that different than me just using curl like from the command line?
From the command line? Well, the reason it's different from the command line, Drew, is because I am not the command line wizard that you are. And I much more lean towards the graphical user interface apps for doing things like this. So GetAPI, I also use Fork, which is my Git repo, my Git management tool. That's another tool that I use because I'm just not as well versed in the command line. So if you're like me and you prefer to use visual tools rather than command line tools for doing these types of inputs, then I definitely recommend GetAPI. And the reason I gravitated away from Postman is because it just felt like Postman was so bloated. It did so much that honestly I didn't.
It feels like it's more bloated every time.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't even have.
Yeah, and it definitely feels geared towards like larger corporate environments. Like, I don't know, everything is kind of like nothing. Well, it's weird because like you have to log into this web thing, and then there's like synchronized things that don't stay synchronized, and I don't know. I feel like it's gotten worse over time. So yeah, I mean the main features are still there, but they haven't really changed that much either. So
yeah, to me it felt like just way too big of a hammer for what I'm trying to do. All I want to do is just test my endpoints, and the app isn't perfect. You can see that there's a little bit of bugs in it. Sometimes like things won't reorder the way you want if I'm trying to reorder things or what.
Is it available? I was going to ask you, where do you get it? Is it available on the App Store? Do you download it from the website somewhere?
I wasn't prepared for this. I think it is available. Let me see.
GetAPI.com.
Oh, $39. Buy once, use forever. Yeah, so it is a one-time download, one-time purchase from GetAPI.com. Yeah, I've been very happy with it.
Okay, well that seems great.
And what do I use it for, Drew? You might ask.
Yes, I would love to know.
I use it for working with the server-side Swift code that I write using Vapor. And what I've been working on recently is a lot of sign-in with Apple code. Because for my new app, I'm using sign-in with Apple when the user wants to create an account. When they get to that point in the app, and then for my existing app, the Midst, you have to create an account right from the beginning because it is a social network. And so anything that you do associated with that is going to be associated with your username. And what I've been working on with sign-in with Apple has been not only the front end, which a lot of blog posts that you find out there seem to only talk about the front end side, the client side of sign-in with Apple. And then you kind of fall off a cliff when it comes to what happens on the back end, on the server side. If you want to save any of this information to your server, you're going to need some identifying markers on your server. So to talk about sign-in with Apple in a podcast format is a little tough, but I'm going to do the best I can. If you're implementing it using SwiftUI, there is a Sign In with Apple button that is built right into SwiftUI. It's just called the I think it's called Sign In with Apple button view. And then there's some options that you can say. Do you want to say sign in with Apple, continue with Apple? I'm kind of doing this off the top of my head, but I think I have sign in with Apple is just what I've selected. And then that button, when you click that button, it's going to pop up that sheet that you're probably familiar with. It just says sign in. It's going to use your Face ID, your Touch ID to authorize that.
Right.
When that comes back, that's going to make a query to Apple. That's going to come back with a what's called an AS authorization Apple ID credential. And it returns a result. And if the result is successful, because it could fail if it's failed for whatever reason, it fails. But if it comes back successful, you're going to have that credential. And that credential contains a very unique identifier for every user. And that identifier is interesting to me because it's not a UUID. It's a user identifier which is stable across your devices. You could delete an app and then reinstall it, and it's still going to recognize you as the same person. You may have seen this where you've used Sign In with Apple once, and you come back to that app or that website again, and if you click the Sign In with Apple button again, it will say continue with your account.
Right. It wants you to log back in with your not not sign up or whatever. So yeah, it does know that it's you again. So
Yeah,
that's tied to your Apple ID, I assume. That's
is.
great. That seems
Yeah.
so. Why? So the biggest question I have, I guess, I mean, signing with Apple sounds good. I guess. Do you think of it as like? Do you prefer it? Do you like it?
Well, I do like it. And do I prefer it? Absolutely prefer it. Mostly because then,
Well, like, do you prefer it over, let's say, either having a different sign-in system, having no sign-in system, and what are the situations where you might want to use it as opposed to not?
well, there's a lot of reasons not to use it. It creates friction, right? A lot of people probably I have to create an account. I don't want to create an account, So that is can be like a paywall for some people. I just want to use the app. I don't want to have to create an account. I just want to use the app. I don't want to have to pay, of course. So, but if there's reasons where you have certain interactions or certain experiences in your app that are tied to an individual user, you're going to need some way of tracking who that individual user is. A social network, for example. The new app that I'm working on has accounts because one person is going to be looking for a team to join, and so that person is going to need to be continually identified, whether they maybe they haven't used the app in a while, maybe they've deleted the app, or they come back to it a year later. You're going to need to re-identify that person as the same person, or ideally you would identify them.
Ideally, yeah, right. And I know I see sign in with Apple in some of the apps, and if I have to create an account, I usually choose that because it's convenient. And the first time, I think do you get to choose if you share your email or not, or does it always just share an email?
You choose if you share your actual email, or you can spoof an email.
Or a fake email. Yeah,
a fake email, yes. And that's another reason to use sign in with Apple. And the reason I don't use like my own system is because now on my own server, let's say I set up my own system to track users, right? Like email address, birthday, name, whatever other identifying markers you want to use. Now you're responsible for that security. If your server gets hacked, now that's all out in the open and that's on you. Whereas sign in with Apple passes that responsibility off to Apple. Now you have certain, identifying things that you can save on your server, but sign in with Apple really reduces the amount of data that's transferred between your server or saved on your server, I should say. So that's the reason that I prefer it. It's also kind of one of these trusted things. There's sign in with Google,
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as trusting it, feel like it's got that certainly in the Apple ecosystem. The one time where there are some times where I will avoid using it, which is like my normal Apple ID I have is normally sort of my personal Apple ID, and I'm like, well, if this is like a businessy thing, I'm not going to want to use that same Apple ID be tied to it or whatever. Or once in a while, I won't choose it if it's something I think I'm going to use long term, but really, really infrequently. But you've written a blog post, is what I hear. CertainlySwift.com.
I did. I wrote a blog post about this because to go back to the thing that the most posts that I see about sign in with Apple, they don't address the back end side of things. And remember when we use that sign in with Apple button, you're going to get a unique identifier for your person, but you also get a JSON web token that has a bunch of other identifiers in it. And you can send that JSON web token to your server. And then using Vapor has a built-in helper that is called jwt.apple.verify. And it uses the identity token that's within that JSON web token and your own app's bundle identifier. That is sent to Apple's server to verify that JWT is valid, and as long as that comes back valid, you'll again get the app's the app user their unique identifier, that same sign in with Apple identifier that's tied to the iCloud account. So you can use that to pair with their account on your server, and so that way you're doing it almost feels like a triple check. You're checking it on device when the sign in with Apple button is tapped. You're sending that JWT to your server, which is querying Apple's server and sending back on authentication, and everything is verified.
So Okay, so do you have, I guess first question, I have never used sign in with Apple as a developer. So do you have to have, like, do you have to have that back end piece? Like, what if I've got a junky app or something?
Yeah, I was actually, that was kind of a question I had for you.
for
Like,
example.
why would you use this but not use the backend? Because unless you're storing that Apple identifier, I can't think of a way to use only the front end, only the client side of this sign in, unless you were using it as like an authentication gate that just making sure your user can sign in. I honestly couldn't think of a scenario where you wouldn't use this on the back end.
Okay.
Maybe you can think of something. I honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Most sort of real, quote, real apps have a backend anyway, so it doesn't probably matter. I don't know. I'm just thinking.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think of this scenario where why is this? Because it does work. You could just implement the front end side on the client and stop there, because you'll still get back some information, but you would have to store that. I guess you could store that information in the user's keychain, but if they
Yeah, but yeah, that doesn't
No.
seem great.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, I feel like that half of this is the server side. I don't see blog posts about it a lot for the server side.
All right, well, so give us a high level overview of the server side. What's involved there? So they sign in with Apple on their device. You get JSON web token that you send to your server. Your server verifies it with Apple. And is this on the first request, or is it every time you?
Well, every time you sign in, you're going to get every time you trigger a sign in, you're going to get a new JSON web token, because if I remember correctly, that is only valid for about 5 minutes. There are things that you do only get on the first request. The email address, for sure, is something you only get on the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so if you don't save it,
know.
and the first request being the first time that user hits the sign in with Apple and gets an authentication back. The second time they do it, and when would the second time be? That might be if they deleted your app and reinstalled it.
Oh, wow.
It will not send it again, because Apple knows that user has tapped that button in that app before, and so it's not going to send back an email the next time. And that's for, security or whatever reason that Apple chose to do that. But on the server side, when you send that JSON web token, it comes back as an authenticated token. So as long as it doesn't throw, you're going to get a number of items back from that, such as do they use a private email? Do they have a real user status? And Apple does their own checks on their end to determine if it's an actual user.
Okay, so first time you go through this process, it gets sent to your server, you send it to Apple, they send you back, you get this sort of information about the user that you only get the one time. And then, now how is that different from, like, if I come back to the app later again, and I do the sign in, or because if I sign in with Apple, I don't, it doesn't tell me sign in with Apple every time I launch the app, right? It just does it sometimes. Why do I never have to show it again? Like, why don't I have to sign in every time? Or
Yeah, well, what I do, I create, after that sign in has happened, I create a bearer token on my server and send that back to the app. And that bearer token is going to contain the token that I created on my server and the person ID that's tied to that user. And so then on the client side, I save that.
And the person ID that's one of your database things, or this is part of the sign in with Apple system?
That's actually one of my database things.
Okay.
I tie that bearer token to the person account that I created on my server.
Wait. I'm sorry. Let's back up a step.
Okay.
So I launched the app now the second time. I've already signed in with Apple the first time. Like, what does the app have to do there? Does it have to send something to Apple or to your, what is it? What's the process?
What I do is I check to see if that person has a valid bearer token saved on their keychain.
In their keychain. Okay.
Correct. Yep. And if there is one and it's still valid, then bam, you're just in.
And it's valid based on the expiration time of the token, or?
Right.
Okay. Okay. So if that's still valid, you're just in, and you use that to send to your server to identify the user, or how does the user get identified from that?
That bearer token?
Yeah, I guess. What do you use that token for?
I just, for me, I'm just verifying that it exists, because if it doesn't exist or is invalid, then I trigger the sign-in flow again. And honestly, that's how I handle it. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I'm still a little naive about all this stuff, I guess. So
I think I am too, but this is well,
but you've got it in a couple apps, right?
I do, but it still feels like, okay, am I doing this correctly, right? Am I checking for validity correctly? And I always question this, because it's like, well, how do I know what I've missed?
Am I doing something incredibly stupid that I don't even realize?
Yeah, because I'm not a security expert. This is just the flow that I've gone through, and in researching sign in with Apple, which is actually pretty tough to find information on the server side of how to handle this stuff. I don't even know that much about bearer tokens. It's just I'm creating a how do I do it? I create a random identifier on the server, and then I just send that back to my client.
So when your client then talks to your server on that second launch, how does your server know who the client is then? Like, how do they know that that's associated with me? Or
how does my client know it's talking to that? Oh, well, because I had to think about that for a second. Every query that it sends to check for new posts, it's sending the not the client ID, but the
like a user identifier?
The user identifier, yeah. And I can't remember if I'm using the person identifier, which would be a UUID, or the sign in with Apple identifier. I can't remember which of those. In fact, I could look at GetAPI real quick to find how I am asking about those endpoints. Let me just see. So I'm using the sign in with Apple identifier. When I send a request to get new posts, any new posts that have been made, I'm using the sign in with Apple identifier that is on the client to verify that. So that's how it knows, or that's how I'm using it anyway.
So every communication from your app to your server to your backend is sending the sign in with Apple identifier. Yes. Which then gets validated again, I guess, by the server, or does it use that just as a lookup? Maybe that's proprietary and secret, and I shouldn't ask. No,
it's using and I've got to look at my code again. This is great. This is live. It's like a live demo, because I didn't expect these questions, but they're valid questions, and I think it's good. So I have protected roots, and those roots have to be validated. I think it's to create statuses. Yes, I have a token authenticator, and this is kind of some middleware stuff that it's called an async bearer authenticator, and this is VaporSide or JSON Web Token side stuff that's making sure that you have a bearer token in there in order to create a post.
What did you say it was called again?
Async bearer authenticator, and so I'm filtering on the server side. Do I have a bearer token that matches a value that's on the server that matches also with the user? And so if those things all tie up, then yes, that's a user. Yes, that's a bearer token. Those are valid, and that user can now post or whatever in my protected roots.
Very cool. So then once you've got all that set up, if you want to add a new API endpoint for your backend or change some data structure, anything like that, you're not having to think about this on every little
right. As long as it's in that protected root, because it's a group, root grouped, and so anything that's under that group is just going to be authenticated. Now you're going to have to provide your SIWA, your sign in with Apple identifier, in order for that to pass that gate, that authenticated group. So that will be part of your new endpoint. But
you're going to have to at least call a thing that jumps through those hoops, make sure that it's but you'd have to do that. You have to do something anyway, right? You have to always make sure that your users who you think they are. And do you feel like integrating, like I know you were using Vapor on the back end, does Vapor feel like it works well with sign in with Apple, or do you feel like they're kind of at odds, or irrelevant?
No, really. I mean, the method that is used to handle that sign in with Apple process on the back end is actually pretty straightforward. There's a lot of little steps that are going into it, but it's really that one line that you're sending to Apple to verify that JSON Web Token. And after that, it's kind of up to you how you handle the identifier that comes back from Apple, that sign in with Apple ID, the expiration time, how you create your bearer token. That's kind of down to you. And the one line that it's a helper method, and it's somewhat opaque to me, but it's just jwt.apple.verify. And they have other helper methods for sign in with Google, but how that's working a little bit behind the scenes, I don't know. So for that reason, I do like Vapor's implementation that it's like, you want to use sign in with Apple, you want to verify with their servers, just send that JSON Web Token and send your app's bundle identifier, and it's gonna authenticate with them.
As easy as it can be, but it maybe isn't super easy, huh?
It wasn't immediately clear to me how to do this. In fact, when I first implemented Sign In with Apple, it took me a lot longer than I expected, because I just didn't feel like I had a whole lot of resources as to what to do with this information once you put it on the back end, how you handle it on the server side. And that's why I wrote the blog post.
And have you, did you end up finding good information somewhere, or is it you just kind of stumbled your way through it, or ChatGPT, or? Yeah,
I'm sure there was a combination of blog posts, Vapor documentation. Apple has a fairly decent website about sign in with Apple with a REST API, and so there is documentation out there, but kind of collaborating all of it and getting it into one flow, it took me a while.
Well, I've looked at your blog post. I have not read all of it, because it was just a couple days ago and I haven't had much chance, but you have a lot of detail there and a lot of code, a lot of, you had said somewhere here, oh, you better make sure you get this the first time because you're never going to get it again. And boy, I can't imagine that could make testing hard if you have to keep creating a new ID for something, a new Apple ID to sign up as a new person. And
it is hard. In fact, I think on my own device, I have my email is nil email because I didn't get it the first time, and you are not going to get it again. Thankfully, I know what my own email is, but
right.
But it can be a gotcha if you didn't do something right and you got a whole bunch of users right away, and you will not get their emails if you didn't.
I was just thinking about the email because you had said last episode that when we were at the we had just come from the Swift what's it called, Deep Dish Swift conference, and one of the speakers there had talked about collect those email addresses, send the people a message. I don't remember. Did we talk about that last time?
I think we did. Yeah, kind of like doing like win back email campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, and they just did. They just had he just demonstrated like a little form that's like, hey, keep up to date on what's going on. Put in your email. But in this case, if you're collecting it anyway, collecting those and sending a message, say, hey, we just released a new update, or that they do amount to something over time. And
I made some notes about it, but one of the biggest notes that I made was the fact that you actually have to do some authorization, or you have to. There's some stuff you have to do on the App Store Connect side to say that you are going to be using these emails to market to your customers. Yeah, you can't just send emails because and what email are you sending them from? You had to do some registration and.
Oh, right. There was something about that, right?
And it prevents the evil aspect, just harvesting emails.
Just harvesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. I really recommend you go read through Dan's blog post. It is quite detailed, especially if this is something you're interested in doing. Even if you're not, I think you can learn something probably. But yeah.
I think that's it.
All right. Yeah. We will talk to you all soon. Thanks.
Thanks, Drew. See ya.
See ya.